Hey, this is Rich Powell from ClearPath. I'm here today to share why you should forget what you know about coal plants with carbon capture. First, you've probably heard that coal with carbon capture is a dead-end technology, that it's too expensive and simply too hard to rely on as part of a zero-emission energy mix. And I'll explain why historically that's not been entirely untrue. Second, though, I'll explain why new technology like Jupiter Oxygen is changing the game for this approach, and why coal actually can be a part of our clean energy future. Third, I'll explain why that's such good news, because coal with carbon capture is actually the most important technology in the world when it comes to decarbonizing the energy sector and solving the problem of climate change. First, let's talk about what's been tried so far to clean up coal. There have really been two approaches. The first one, called pre-combustion carbon capture, sometimes IGCC, can really only be done with a new build coal plant. And since most of the problem with coal around the world is retrofitting existing plants, let's not spend too much time on this one. Instead, we'll talk about post-combustion carbon capture. Now, that can be retrofit onto an existing plant. The way that works is you start with a typical coal plant design. You take coal and air, you put them together into a boiler, you light it on fire. That produces a stream of hot gases coming off of it. All that heat is put into a steam generator. That makes a bunch of steam, which goes into a steam turbine and makes electricity. And then you have to worry about treating that stream of gas that comes off. First, it has all the traditional scrubbers always put onto a coal plant. It takes out the things like mercury and particulate matter and SOx and NOx. And then it adds a new unit onto the end, which takes out the CO2. Now, that is still under development as a technology. It shows a lot of promise in some applications, but it does have to deal with the fundamental problem of stripping a very large amount of CO2 out of a stream of other gases, mostly nitrogen, at the end of the process. The newer approaches to this technology try to simplify that last step. So second, let's talk about this exciting new approach for coal. One of these, Jupiter Oxygen, was developed by an American innovator named Dietrich Gross, and it's a process called an Oxy Combustion Retrofit. So let's go back to that same coal plant. You'll remember it's coal being combined with air that goes into the boiler and gets lit on fire. In the Oxy Combustion Retrofit, that air coming in is instead replaced with a stream of pure oxygen that's generated by something called an air separating unit. That pulls oxygen out of the air we all breathe. Now, coming out of the boiler, instead of a stream of all kinds of hot gases, you basically have a stream of pure CO2. It still goes into a steam generator, still generates steam and makes electricity. You still have to have the scrubbers that take out the traditional pollutants from the coal, like mercury and particulates and SOx. But after that, you're left with effectively a pure stream of CO2, which can be piped off for something like enhanced oil recovery. Now, this whole thing has a couple of benefits. First, because it's an oxy combustion process, the boiler burns hotter, and therefore the whole thing is more efficient than a typical coal plant. Second, this process is less capital intensive to retrofit than traditional post-combustion carbon capture. Third, this is really good news for the climate. The more tools we have to take care of greenhouse gas emissions from coal, the better chance we have to solve the global climate challenge. Globally, traditional coal plants account for about 2/3 of all carbon emissions from the power sector, which is in turn about 20% of total global CO2 emissions. That makes coal plants the single largest chunk of CO2 emissions. China alone has about 1,000 coal plants with an average age of only 11 years. It's very unlikely they're going to shut these down early. Unless we can retrofit them with something like Jupiter, it will be really hard to get global emissions down to zero on a meaningful timescale. That's why we're so excited about this new technology. Thanks for watching.